Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you hear this story, right,
Sorry.
from the late 1500s about this one guy, a bandit, who they say killed, wait for it, 964 people.
964. It's a huge number.
Exactly. One person, his name apparently was Christman Genipperteinga, and you just have to ask, how? How does one person do that? And why haven't we all heard of him if it's true?
Hmm.
So that's really what we're digging into today. We've got these sources you shared, and they lay out this absolutely wild, horrific story. But they also cast some serious doubt.
A lot of doubt.
So our mission here really is to go through this material, pull out the story itself, the details, but also the historical side, the evidence, or, the lack of it, see what we can actually figure out about this. Christman Genipperteinga.
And you've nailed it. That's the core tension right there in the sources.
Yeah.
We have this incredibly detailed story. I mean, really vivid. But then hovering over it all is this huge question mark. Did he even exist? Did he do these things?
Right.
Or is this more like historical folklore? So this deep dive, it's not just about telling a gruesome story. It's more about peeling back the layers of, well, history and how stories get told, and sometimes maybe distorted.
Okay, so where does this whole story even start? The main source, you're saying, is a pamphlet from 1581.
That's right, 1581, written by someone named Caspar Herber. And it supposedly came out right after Genipperteinga was executed.
Caspar Herber. Got it.
But here's the first interesting bit from the sources. This story, it doesn't show up in the usual places you'd look.
Like court records, town chronicles.
Exactly. Nothing contemporary, nothing local. It seems to just appear in these pamphlets, late 16th century. And they all seem to kind of riff off that original one by Herber.
Huh.
And another little detail the sources mention, we don't actually know of any other works by this Caspar Herber that survived, just this one pamphlet.
That is strange. Okay, well, let's get into what Herber's pamphlet actually says, because the details are pretty specific. It claims Genipperteinga was born near Cologne in a place called Kerpen, which is Kerpen now. And his hideout, this is classic bandit stuff, a furnished cave system near Bernkastel, in the woods, an area called Fressburg.
Yeah, and the pamphlet makes a point about the location, how strategic it was.
Right, the view.
Exactly. Supposedly he could see the main roads, roads going to Trier, Metz, Thionville, Luxembourg, all important places.
Perfect for highway robbery, basically.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, the pamphlet says that was his main gig.
It starts there. But the story, well, it gets much, much darker very quickly. It's not just robbery.
No, it talks about mass murder, even infanticide, which is just horrible.
The scale is, well, it's meant to shock. And the pamphlet alleges he got rid of the bodies by throwing them down this old mine shaft connected to the cave system.
It's just awful. And then there's that part, I mean, it really stands out about the young woman he kidnapped.
Oh, yeah. That detail is incredibly grim.
From Boppard, it says. Kept her as a slave in the cave.
And then it claims he killed the children they had together.
Oh, yeah.
6 children. Yes, the pamphlet goes there. It's brutal. And it even includes this supposed, quote, this line of verse attributed to him about
It
it.
got rhyme. Yeah, I remember reading that.
Tanzt, liebe Kindlein, tanzt. Genipperteinga, euer Vater, macht euch den Tanz. Dance, dear little children, dance. Genipperteinga, your father, is making the dance for you.
Chilling. Just absolutely chilling.
It really is. And you see how a detail like that, so specific and so gruesome, makes the story stick, gives it this kind of horrifying authenticity, even if it's just part of the legend.
So, okay, he's got this whole operation going, the cave, the murders. How does the story say he finally gets caught?
Well, according to Herber's pamphlet, his downfall was actually letting that captive woman go into town, into Bernkastel.
You let her go. Why?
The pamphlet doesn't really explain why, just that he did. And of course, she went straight to the authorities and told them everything.
Ah, so she led them back.
That's the story. She guides 30 armed men to the cave. And what they supposedly find inside is just immense.
Treasure.
Right. Huge amounts of stuff. Wine, salted meat, armor, weapons, coins, valuables of all kinds. A massive hoard.
And you didn't the pamphlet put a number on it? Something huge.
Yeah, it estimated the value at over 70,000 gulden.
70,000? I mean, you can see why that detail would be in there. That's an astonishing amount of money for the time. Finding that would be, wow.
Absolutely. And the story continues saying that when they captured him, they also found like a tally stick or some record of his victims and the loot.
He kept records.
Allegedly. And the pamphlet says he confessed pretty easily, admitted to all the murders. He even supposedly said he wished he'd reached 1,000 victims. That he would have been satisfied then.
So the 964 was him falling short of his goal. That's
Yeah,
twisted.
very. It paints him as monstrously methodical.
And his end. The pamphlet gives dates for that, too.
Right, it does. Found guilty June 17th, 1581. Sentenced to death by breaking on the wheel, June 26th.
Especially on the wheel. That's one of the worst.
Absolutely horrific punishment. And the final sort of sensational detail in Herber's account is that he supposedly didn't die right away.
No.
The pamphlet claims he survived the torture for 9 days before finally dying.
9 days. Ugh. Again, it just adds to this image of him being almost inhuman.
Exactly.
Next.
Whether it's meant to show his toughness or just amplify the horror, it's a powerful closing image for the story.
Okay. So that's the story. It's detailed, it's gory, it's memorable, it has all the elements. But now we hit that wall you mentioned earlier, the big question hanging over everything.
Right.
Was any of it real? Is this history or just a really effective, scary story?
And this is where, we have to put our historian hats on, looking at the sources critically. As we said, it's an amazing story.
But no local records.
Precisely. No court documents from Bernkastel.
Yeah.
No execution records matching those dates or details. No mention in town chronicles. Nothing outside of these pamphlets that all seem to trace back to Herber.
Which is a huge problem if you're trying to verify it.
It's a massive red flag. I mean, think about it. A guy confesses to nearly 1,000 murders, gets tortured for 9 days, executed publicly. That kind of event would almost certainly leave some trace in official records of the time. The silence is deafening, really.
So that's why he's not, a household name like some other historical criminals. The proof just isn't there.
Pretty much. The story exists, and it's persisted.
Yeah.
But the historical verification, that's missing.
Okay, but the sources also place him in a kind of context, right? Saying he wasn't the only one like this.
That's an interesting point, yeah. Their sources note he's one of the most, let's say, famous examples from a whole genre of 16th century German pamphlets about supposed serial killers and master criminals.
So like a trend.
Sort of. His story shares features with other bandit tales from that era that were also sensationalized in print. These pamphlets were popular entertainment, maybe cautionary tales too.
And did the story change over time? You mentioned later versions.
Yeah, that's another key thing the sources highlight. The original 1581 Herber pamphlet, horrific as it is, doesn't mention things like cannibalism or deals with the devil or, supernatural powers.
So those got added later.
It seems so.
Yeah.
Later reprints, some even turning up in leftover material from the Brothers Grimm centuries later,
Right.
in the 19th century, those versions started including cannibalism and more fantastical elements.
Right. So it started as maybe extreme, but human crime.
And then, as it drifted more into folklore, it picked up these extra, even more sensational layers, which is actually pretty typical for how legends evolve. They get embellished over time.
Okay, so let's sort of wrap this up. We've gone through this really vivid, really disturbing story of Christman Genipperteinga from these old pamphlets, the incredible number of victims, 964, the cave hideout, the robbery, the murders, that awful rhyme.
The treasure, the capture, the gruesome execution.
It's all there, a complete horrifying narrative.
But, and it's a big but, we've also seen the serious historical doubt. That lack of confirmation outside of this one specific type of source, these pamphlets, it means his actual existence, and definitely the scale of those crimes, remains really uncertain from a historical perspective.
Yeah, it leaves you with this powerful story, but you don't know if it's fact or fiction or maybe something in between, a legend built on a grain of truth, perhaps, or just pure sensationalism from the 16th century.
It's compelling either way, isn't it?
It really is.
And maybe that leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Why do stories like this one about Genipperteinga, stories filled with such extreme violence, such specific, chilling details, why do they even emerge? And why do they last for centuries even when we can't prove they actually happened? What does that tell us about maybe our own fascination with the darker side of things? Or what it says about the fears, the anxieties, the storytelling traditions of the people who first told these tales and kept retelling them?